think it's absolutely absurd that they're even considering to cut sports. My kid being on the South hockey team is the reason that he goes to school. It's the reason that he pushes to get his grades so that he can keep playing hockey.
I've made so many new friends. Just like I was a freshman and I was scared. And like I've made so many new friends through it. And it's definitely helped like with my mental health, and I've like coaches stay on to you about grades too, so you don't fall behind.
Yeah, that's right. We are seeing some warmer weather moving back in across the state, particularly across south central as well as into southeast. We're also watching some high winds, which will develop across northeastern parts of Kodiak Island tonight, where we could see winds up to 70 miles per hour with some heavy rain set to move into southeast. So warm weather taking hold across the state. We're still seeing a few areas across the interior as well as the slope where we've got some winter weather concerns, winter storm watch as you head north of Fairbanks into your Tuesday. And then as you head along the northwest Arctic Borough, as well as along the slope, we've got blizzard warnings and winter weather advisories. And this is where we're going to see that potential for some gusty winds leading to some blowing snow and reduced visibility. Now, winds for the most part this morning, as well as precipitation, fairly quiet. Now, winds that we are seeing are out towards the Aleutians, where winds have been gusting 20 to 40 miles per hour. We'll see winds increasing along the slope later today. And of course, Kodiak, you'll be seeing those winds increasing tonight on into your Tuesday. And that is where that high wind watch goes into effect, where we could see winds up to 70 miles per hour. Be prepared for high winds, which could move loose debris, damage property, and cause some power outages. So we'll see an extended period of gusty conditions overnight on into our Tuesday. And this comes as this area of low pressure to our south builds northward. You can see that moisture building into southeast. Rain arrives into Kodiak later tonight after about 11 to 12 a.m. and then builds northward into south central. Coastal showers will stay with us through the night. Inland areas of south central will tap into some rain and freezing rain potential as we welcome in the overnight hours on into your Tuesday. So be prepared for that as that active weather stays with us. And while coastal activity stays in the forecast, inland areas of south central will see ample dry time throughout the rest of this week. But we are expected to see some heavy rainfall out towards Prince William Sound. We could see about 1 to 3 inches here over the next couple of days, while western parts of south central see about 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of that rain, with some localized areas of freezing rain embedded within that. So largely expecting the heaviest rain out towards Prince William Sound, while inland areas see some of that passing showers. Considerable avalanche danger still remains with us above tree line, where a person may still trigger a very large avalanche on a weak layer, which is buried about 2 to 5 feet deep. So be prepared for that if you are heading out into the backcountry. Temperatures stay warm, though. We're talking about highs sitting near to above freezing. There's that wintry mix chance into our Tuesday. Coastal showers remain, but inland areas will see a bit more cloud covers this week, with snow returning by Sunday. Adelmi?
And my apologies if you guys couldn't hear my audio before. We had a little bit of my mic died, so I apologize for that. So I guess I'll repeat what was the last thing I said before I handed it over to Aaron. The current proposal for the ASD budget sports includes a complete end to funding for all middle school sports, as well as many different high school sports, including hockey, swimming and diving, wrestling, volleyball, and others, such as those that we had listed. And some notable exclusions on that are football, basketball, track, and cheer, which would continue to be funded, as well as baseball and softball, which are funded by outsourcing from individual teams. And you heard earlier from a parent and a student at a hockey game, and why the prospect of losing their favorite sports cut deep. And electric bills in interior Alaska have seen a recent increase, leaving residents wondering why. According to Golden Valley Electric Association, the region's utility, a few factors make December and January the most expensive times for electricity. Colder temperatures led to greater use of space and heaters, and systems were keeping homes and cars warm. During the weeks-long cold snap in Fairbanks saw in December, these systems had to run more than normal. Also during the holidays, members spend more time at home running appliances and other items. Meanwhile, the utility says rates are around 5% higher now than this time last year.
This January, absolutely understand that bills coming out are surprising many members for how high they are, and we attribute a huge portion of that to the record-breaking cold that we experienced in December. We had sustained temperatures under zero, at even colder than that.
Bradish says GVEA has services to help people identify how they're using their power and where they might find inefficiencies. And property owners in the Fairbanks North Star are starting to receive their property value assessments. These assessments are used to determine how much owners will owe in property tax once the tax rate is set toward the end of the budget process in May or June. According to Borough Mayor Greer Hopkins, letters went out Wednesday, and owners have 30 days from then to appeal the assessment if they feel the real value of their property is not reflected. He said owners can generally expect a rise in the determined market value of their property from last year, about equal to inflation, and appeals can be made at the assessor's office.
You can talk to our assessing department and they can walk you through what that appeal process is. It's a busy time of year for us for sure, as a lot of people want to understand the math that went into their assessment. I think it's going to be a responsible number this year, and hopefully right around what we saw last year with match to inflation.
More information about how to appeal and how assessments work can be found on the borough's website. And a fire broke out in a trailer park in Muldoon, which sent 5 people to the hospital, 3 children and 2 adults. Shortly after 4 p.m., the AFD received the call about a fire in Rangeview Mobile Home Park. The main living area of the trailer caught fire after a suspected appliance issue. And that's according to firefighters. Muldoon Road was partially closed while firefighters put out the fire, which took some time due to the compromised structure. The origin and cause of the fire is under investigation. And in East Anchorage, another home fire sent 1 person to the hospital and 2 dogs to the emergency vet Sunday. According to Captain Ryan Swordsell with the Anchorage Fire Department, it was a single-family home with heavy fire out of the back of the building. When they arrived, the occupant The occupant was outside with one dog, but the other dog was trapped downstairs. According to Sword Salt says they were able to put out the fire and get the dog out from downstairs. The person in the house was taken to the hospital with unknown injuries. Sword Salt says he thought the fire was caused by a cooking accident. And the warm temperatures probably made the course a little slick, but when you're dressed as a Viking, does it really matter? Sunday was the Alaska Ski for Women. It's an annual event held on the first Sunday in February, and according to Nordic Ski Associate of Anchorage, it is the largest women's cross-country ski event in the nation. They typically see close to 1,000 women at the event. Now, in addition to the fun costumes and party wave, in addition to those, there were actual races and timed events, including a freestyle race and classic race. This is a fundraising event for the Nordic Ski Association and for Alaska nonprofits that work to end domestic violence.
Very beautiful groomed trails. Today is the best weather we've seen in quite some time, and just really a supportive group of community members. So if you're brand new to the sport, we highly encourage you to join us. Almost 30% of our skiers every year, this is their first day on skis.
Former U.S. Olympic skier Sue Forbes took home the gold for the classic race, while Leah Besh won the skate ski. And on Wednesday, the Federal Reserve made the decision to keep interest rates where they are, despite the president wanting the rates to be lowered. Tracy Sinclair sat down with Al Biss with Biss Wealth Partners to get a little better understanding about what the Federal Reserve does and how it impacts our lives.
Two mandates, and they're not always working together. The first mandate is maximum employment. That is trying to get as many people in the workforce as possible so we have as few people not working. Okay. So that's the first mandate. The second mandate is price stability, so not having inflation, which, for years you talk inflation, no one really got it. The last 5 years, people have understood a lot more because we've actually seen some. So the Federal Reserve is trying to do two things that conflict sometimes.
Tracy learned so much about what the Federal Reserve is and how it impacts our daily life. You should check out this latest edition of In Depth Alaska. Find it wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And flu numbers in Alaska remain high but have been dropping over the past few weeks. According to the respiratory virus snapshot from the state of Alaska, numbers of flu have decreased from a peak at the beginning of the year. Regions that still see high numbers are the Northwest and the Yukon Delta, but like the rest of the state, those numbers are declining, and the report does state that areas with low numbers should indicate a lack of testing, not an absence of the disease. And Alaska's population is in a constant state of flux. The population grew last year, even if only by a small percentage. The State Department of Labor and Workforce Development estimates the population grew by 0.2%. Which is the 1,649 people. Now we continued the pattern of losing people by net migration, more people moving out than moving in, but the state gained people by natural increase, which means the number of births minus the number of deaths. Other trends that continued last year but at a lower rate was a decrease in the working age population and an increase in elderly population.
Members returned to an icy Washington today looking to unfreeze.
And excuse me for that. That was supposed to be some sound bites for that story, the population change stories. But to summarize what they said, it was those the there was emphasis on, because of size and diversity in Alaska, there is no single issue or solution. Now, with the government in partial shutdown, it's now up to the House to pass a funding bill to get it reopened. But with tension still high from the events in Minneapolis, Democrats say how long that takes depends on reforms to immigration enforcement. Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
House members returned to an icy Washington today, looking to unfreeze funding for large chunks of the government, now in a partial shutdown. House Speaker Mike Johnson predicting passage by tomorrow of a Senate-passed package that fully funds most of the government while splitting off the Department of Homeland Security.
I'm confident that we'll do it at least by Tuesday.
Congress then has 2 weeks to negotiate the immigration enforcement reforms Democrats are demanding, including ending roving ICE patrols and body cameras on all federal immigration officers. Speaker Johnson citing President Trump's border czar.
I think even Tom Homan has acknowledged both of those things are acceptable and what he was intending to do already. So I think we're on the path to get agreement.
The top Democrat in the House underscoring that path must lead to dramatic reform.
The administration can't just talk the talk, they need to walk the walk.
Some leading Democrats urging a no vote on even the short-term package, pressing to repeal a huge spike in funding ICE secured under last year's so-called Big Beautiful Bill.
I just don't see how in good conscience Democrats can vote for continuing ICE funding when they're killing American citizens.
That amid weekend vigils in Minneapolis for 2 people killed by federal immigration officers, Renee Good.
It's been very, very difficult.
And ICU nurse Alex Preddy.
He lived to help others, and that's what he did. And we were so fortunate to know him and have him as a friend.
Reminders of what's at stake as lawmakers look for agreement to reopen the government with key reforms. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Now we are going to take a very short break. We will be right back momentarily after these messages. Welcome back, and thank you so much for sticking with us. The House returns to Washington in hopes of ending the partial government shutdown, and President Donald Trump is set to host the President of Colombia. Washington correspondent Katrin Asaf has your week ahead in Washington.
All eyes Monday will be on the House of Representatives as lawmakers return to Capitol Hill with hopes of ending the partial government shutdown. The shutdown, which began after midnight Saturday morning, impacts multiple departments, with closures beginning over the weekend. The Senate passed a package Friday funding those agencies. However, the House must now pass this same legislation before sending it to President Trump. If approved, it's set to fund each agency except the Department of Homeland Security through September. DHS funding is set to lapse again in 2 weeks as both parties debate current immigrations and customs enforcement tactics, with Democrats demanding more guardrails on ICE following the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. Also this week, President Donald Trump is set to welcome Colombian President Gustavo Petro to the White House on Tuesday. The meeting comes amid tension between the two men, with current U.S. sanctions on Petro for his alleged connections to drug trafficking. Petro had also previously referred to Trump as a, quote, racist and a, quote, authoritarian. That's your week ahead in Washington. I'm Katrin Asaf. While the Senate Friday night...
And the video I was going to show you that went along with this story is not working, so I shall just read it out loud without the video. A measles outbreak has been reported at a Texas immigration facility. On Sunday, the Department of Homeland Security confirmed 2 detainees at the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, excuse me if I mispronounced that, have been diagnosed with the disease. DHS said the people were immediately quarantined to prevent further spread. The news comes just days after measles was confirmed in a detainee at an Arizona immigration facility. Last year, the U.S. saw a record-breaking year for measles with more than 2,200 cases reported. That's the highest number since the disease was declared eliminated in the U.S. in the year 2000. Texas accounted for more than 700 cases and 2 child deaths during a major outbreak that ended last summer. And now, as senators rushed to keep funding flowing ahead of a midnight deadline, questions remained as Washington entered the weekend in a partial government shutdown. Now it is up to the House as the DHS funding fight gets kicked back 2 weeks. Washington correspondent Katrin Asaf once again has the latest.
While the Senate Friday night approved a package funding most of the federal government and giving lawmakers 2 weeks to discuss changes to the Department of Homeland Security, they still couldn't avoid a partial government shutdown, and that DHS funding fight is still on the horizon. After a week of tense debate, senators agreed to pull funding for DHS and thus ICE out of the legislative funding package, giving them a 2-week extension instead. In that time, both Democrats and Republicans have demands they say need to be met to agree to any funding flow to the department.
Step 2 is now drafting strong, common-sense legislation that reins in ICE and ends the violence.
For the Dems, it's all about ICE and the conduct of federal agents following the killing of 2 residents in Minneapolis. The demands: banning masks, requiring body cameras, and tightening up warrants, as well as guaranteeing ICE operates with local and state law enforcement and be held to the same standards. But the Blue Party aren't the only ones with ideas.
I think the underlying problem is not ICE, it's sanctuary city. How can you ever have rational immigration over 12 states? If you get to one of them, you never get deported.
The question now is, can that fight reach its end in just a few days? Some senators are optimistic.
2 weeks is plenty of time. In Washington, when people are motivated, they can get a lot of things done. So I think we have all the time in the world.
While the upper chamber gears up for that debate, the other side of the coin is getting out of this partial government shutdown. The impacts are subtle since federal agencies are usually closed over the weekend, and major programs like SNAP and WIC are already fully funded. But the House of Representatives will have to forward what the Senate passed on Friday to see an end to the funding freeze. They'll be back in town Monday, but it's unclear how quickly they can reach a deal. In Washington, I'm Katrin Asaf.
And we are going to be taking another very short break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about a man and a dog who were found dead inside of a veterinary clinic, and officials are trying to figure out what happened to them. And then we have a biolab, an illegal biolab has been discovered in Las Vegas, and we're going to dive into those stories when we return. Welcome back. New York police are investigating after a man and a dog were found dead in a mobile vet van. They say another person survived but needed hospitalization. Jenna DeAngelis reports.
Usually they contact, or he does, he reaches out. So it makes sense because he didn't.
Shortly after arriving to the low-cost vet mobile Sunday night for her cat surgery, Lynette Mejias was leaving shocked and in tears.
I didn't expect this, honestly. I really hope he's okay because he's such a sweetheart.
The NYPD responded to the van parked on 65th Avenue near Parsons Boulevard around 9:30 a.m. to discover a 57-year-old man and a dog dead inside. Police say they also found a 73-year-old man unconscious who is now hospitalized.
I was the one that saved him this morning.
This neighbor, who asked we not show her face, says she called 911 after her son saw the owner of the van, who police have not identified, stumble out of the vehicle.
He said he was locked in there for 4 hours, and he was the one that was able to tell me that the surgeon, the veterinarian surgeon, was in the truck dead.
Police are awaiting autopsy results, but say a component of the investigation is if this generator, seen outside the van, played a part. Neighbors say the owner, who survived, has a business nearby, but lives on the street where he keeps the van parked.
He is a nice guy. I just don't like the business being done out of a truck in a residential area.
Mejia says the team is always available at low cost and has saved a lot of pets, including hers. Her hope?
He comes home and goes back to doing, what he loves to do and what we love him for.
Officials say the public faces no threat from what might be an illegal biological laboratory in Las Vegas. Investigators are looking into it after a weekend raid. Jane Davenport reports on what they found inside.
We have one suspect who I was informed that we were taking him into custody as we were walking in here. We're not prepared to release any information on that individual.
Sheriff Kevin McMahill addressed the media at a briefing following the raid at a home on Sugar Springs Drive. He reports that investigators found biological material, including vials of unknown liquid, inside a refrigerator at the home. Public records show the property is owned by two people, David He and Xiaoyan Wang. Back in October 2023, the Department of Justice announced the arrest of Jiabei Zhu, who allegedly goes by many other names, including David He. He was arrested on a criminal complaint for manufacturing and distributing misbranded medical devices at a lab in Reedley, California. U.S. Attorney Philip Talbert said in part, quote, "As part of his scheme, the defendant changed his name, the names of his companies, and their locations." A year later, Talbert announced a superseding indictment charging his romantic and business partner, Xiaoyan Wang, who was accused of operating the biolab. The criminal complaint reads that the two allegedly illegally imported hundreds of thousands of Chinese-made COVID test kits by declaring them as pregnancy test kits. They did so through the companies Universal Meditech Incorporated and Prestige Biotech Incorporated. Through further investigation by the House Select Committee on China, Congressman Jim Costa unveiled a 40-page report in November of 2023, revealing unsettling discoveries found in the Reedley Biolab, which included 1,000 mice that were, quote, kept in inhumane and overcrowded conditions. A worker allegedly told officials that they were transgenic mice that simulate the human immune system and were genetically engineered to catch and carry the COVID-19 virus. Investigators also reported seeing blood, tissue, and other bodily fluid samples and serums in the lab. The report states in 2023, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention tested the substances found in the Reedley lab and detected at least 20 potentially infectious agents, including coronavirus, HIV, hepatitis, and herpes. Meanwhile, authorities have not released further information about what was found in the home in Las Vegas, leaving neighbors concerned.
Again, we live in Vegas, so we can expect a lot of different things, but I don't know if there really is something inside that house and we're this close.
Plans to shutter the Kennedy Center for 2 years aren't sitting well with the family that bears that name. Descendants of former President John F. Kennedy are slamming the proposal. President Donald Trump says it's to enable faster and better renovations. JFK's niece Maria Shriver argues it's because entertainers have been canceling since Trump put his name on the building. Kennedy's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, is using the closure as a rallying cry for his congressional campaign. Former Congressman Joe Kennedy III says JFK believed the actions of people and leaders define a nation. Trump's plan is subject to the approval of the Kennedy Center board, which he chairs. And we'll be right back after another very short break. And when we return, we will talk about the trade war that hits auto workers in Canada, dogs that are now being trained to detect canine cancer, and a ringed seal rescue. We'll have those stories when we return. Welcome back in, and thank you so much for sticking with us. We are now The impact of Donald Trump's trade policies against Canada have become real for hundreds of Ontario auto workers. About 500 General Motors employees in Oshawa, Ontario have been laid off. Friday was their last day on the job. GM has shifted some of its production to a plant in Indiana. Union leaders say up to 1,200 auto workers across supply chain are expected to lose their jobs. One Canadian industry minister said if GM doesn't want to continue to invest in Canada, then they will invest in other companies. And we all know that dogs are man's best friend, but the University of Pennsylvania is teaching them to do something that could make them dog's best friend too. Stephanie Stahl has the story.
Cody is smelling for cancer, deciding among 3 boxes which contains a sample of malignant blood. That's where she pauses.
It really does feel like magic because I can't smell anything from the samples. It's a tiny drop of blood serum.
Clara Wilson, a researcher at the Penn Vet Working Dog Center, says the new study has the dogs identifying a deadly kind of cancer that strikes dogs.
We wanted to focus on hemangiosarcoma, which is a really devastating canine cancer. It's often called the silent killer because it is a tumor that grows in the body, but we don't see it until it's too late.
In the first phase of the research, the dogs correctly identified that cancer 70% of the time.
Thank you.
So they get a treat when they identify the correct sample?
Yes.
Until now, the research here has been primarily focused on human cancers, with the dogs being able to identify ovarian and pancreatic cancer.
The dogs are very unique because they have this incredible sense of smell. It just really does feel amazing and gives me a lot of respect for, understanding that there's a lot of things that I can't understand that they're picking up on.
Once the dogs identify the cancer, researchers look for markers in the samples that could eventually be used to create a test that would find cancer early when it's more treatable.
And the idea here is that if dogs can smell something, that means that there's a signal to detect.
These dogs are laying the groundwork for eventually being able to find cancer early and save lives for both humans and animals. Stephanie Stahl, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Now, NASA is getting ready to launch the Artemis 2 rocket into space with 4 astronauts on board. The agency is preparing for a dress rehearsal at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and the hope is the rehearsal will take place today. But cold weather and strong winds could alter those plans. The initial plan was to launch the Artemis rocket later last week, but that will now be pushed back until engineers can review the results of the dress rehearsal. Once the mission gets underway, the astronauts, will orbit the moon in the Orion spacecraft. This will be the first manned mission to the moon in more than 50 years. And the Alaska Sea Life Center has taken a male ringed seal that was found out of its normal habitat and in an oil field on the North Slope. This happened back in December. According to the Sea Life Center, it was first spotted by workers at the oil field who contacted NOAA Fisheries. The young seal was taken back to the ice but returned again and again to the oil field. The center said when the seal was found on the areas near heavy equipment, he was placed in a crate to prevent him from getting injured, and NOAA Fisheries authorized the seal to be moved to the Alaska Sea Life Center for rehabilitation. The ringed seal is listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Only 30 ringed seals have been admitted to the Sea Life Center in the past 25 years. The seal is not eligible for re-release. Once an ice seal has been taken from their natural range, they cannot be released for fear of spreading diseases from one marine ecosystem to another. And once again, we will be right back after a very short break. I hope you stick with us because when we come back, we have news about the Grammys, we have Team USA arriving, and we have a hero police dog, so stay tuned. Welcome back in. Team USA has officially arrived to Italy. And it is time to rep the red, white, and blue. This is the Team USA welcome experience in Milan. There are members of the Olympic figure skating team. They arrived to applause and then were greeted by messages from friends and family, resulting in lots of smiles. The welcome experience included getting fitted for the opening ceremony and sized up with their podium gear. Team USA in Milan Cortina is made up of more than 230 athletes, which is the largest ever winter U.S. Olympic team. The Olympics officially open on Friday. Coming up soon. And stars gathered for the Grammy Awards Sunday, marking music's biggest night with memorable performances and music that made history. Bradley Blackburn has a recap.
Magic and music were in the air at the Grammys, with performers from Lady Gaga to Bruno Mars. Billie Eilish won Song of the Year for Wildflower. Olivia Dean took home Best New Artist. And Kendrick Lamar, now the most winning rapper in Grammy history, received Record of the Year alongside SZA.
This is what music is about.
Lamar also making history as the first artist to win Record of the Year consecutively. Another big winner, Bad Bunny, who made history with the first Spanish-language album to win Album of the Year.
I want to dedicate this award to all the people that had to leave their homeland, their country, to follow their dreams.
He was one of several stars who spoke out about immigration enforcement.
I'm gonna say, eyes out.
Some wearing pins saying ice out.
I would be remiss if I didn't say something about what's happening in the actual world.
The late Ozzy Osbourne was honored with an all-star tribute led by Post Malone. while Lauryn Hill returned to the Grammy stage for the first time in more than a quarter century to honor Roberta Flack. Trevor Noah was back hosting for a sixth and final time, and he presented Cher with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Never give up on your dream, no matter what happens.
Dreams realized for so many artists on music's biggest night. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
Well, in the lower 48, the winter storm continues with record-setting low temperatures in many areas across the East Coast, as far down as Florida, as south as Florida even. But in North Carolina during the snowstorm over the weekend, one police canine became a local hero. A 13-year-old boy with special needs walked out of his house not dressed for the weather and was missing. As police set up a perimeter around his house searching, a police dog named Bo found the boy a short time later. Authorities say the boy was cold, but it is expected to be just fine. So there you go. Even good boys can be heroes. And fortunately, that's not a loop that we're stuck in. Just an average February 22nd, a Monday. Excuse me, an average February 2nd, not 22nd, 2nd, a Monday, and Groundhog Day. The first official Groundhog Day dates back to 1887 when people of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, made their first trek to Gobbler's Knob, marking the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Now, every February 2nd, this small town welcomes thousands of visitors to see the world's most famous animal meteorologist. If Phil comes out of his hole and sees his shadow, he regards it as an omen of more bad weather ahead and goes back into his burrow for 6 more weeks of winter sleep, which, if you're curious, in today's groundhog ceremony, he predicted 6 more weeks of winter. And dozens of colorful boats with crews dressed in fancy costumes rode along Venice's Grand Canal to mark the start of the Carnival celebrations in the lagoon city. The Carnival features parades, masquerade balls, and street performances which attract visitors from around the globe. Colorful confetti rained down on the procession and the crowds that had gathered to watch on the Rialto Bridge. This year's carnival is titled Olympus, Back to the Origins of the Games, to pay homage to the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina, starting this week on the 6th. And that wraps up the Morning Edition Extra for this wonderful Monday morning. Thank you so much for starting off your week with us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you back here at noon for more. Have a good one.